Hey, good afternoon once again. Welcome to our today's virtual talk. My name is Richard Kipngeno. I work here at Nature Kenya as budding and membership officer, and I will be the moderator of this virtual talk. Just to let you know, this talk has been generously prepared by our insect committee under the patronage and chairmanship of Dr. Dino Martin. And our today's virtual talk is titled From Crawl to Flight, the fascinating journey of rearing butterflies and moths. And our presenter today is Steve Woodhall. So, ladies and gentlemen, I will kindly request that we all remain muted so that we give the speaker ample time to exhaust his presentation. And should you be having any question, feel free to raise it up through the chat box, and we will strive our level best to go through them after the presentation. And also to let you know that we are recording the entire presentation and we'll be able to share the link after we are done. So, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to present to you who our today's speaker is. Steve Woodhall is a British-born butterfly enthusiast, nature guide, photographer, and a long-standing member and former president of the Lepidopterists Society of Africa. He developed an interest in butterflies and moths at the tender age of 5, and what followed was a passionate journey that saw him traverse Eastern and Southern Africa, collecting and documenting numerous species in their natural habitats. He has authored and co-authored several books on butterflies and moths, notably the Field Guide to Butterflies of South Africa, first and second editions. He is currently a full-time Field Guides Association of Southern Africa nature guide and gives butterfly tours, courses, and digital resources through his Butterfly Gear company. That's a brief bio of who our today's speaker is. And ladies and gentlemen, it's now a high time that I welcome him on stage. Welcome, Steve Woodhall.
Thank you, Richard. Very nice words there. I appreciate it. Thank you. I think to get on, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you all for coming along and watching me. So I'm here to talk to you about butterflies and moths and how to rear them. It's a massive subject. It could be here all day if we're not careful. So I've tried to keep it as simple as possible. If anybody starts getting a bit worried that I'm getting too technical, just say so. But anyway, the first slide shows where it all begins. This is a mating pair of the citrus swallowtail, Papillia demodocus, which I think most people in sub-Saharan Africa, at any rate, are familiar with. And it's a common and widespread African member of the family Papilionidae, or swallowtails and swordtails. Okay, here we go. Right, so let's look at some basic facts about butterflies and moths. Okay. Well, number one, there's about 6,500 species of butterflies and about 10 times that many moths in Africa. There's a lot. And they're all insects, which are arthropods, so they lack a bony skeleton, and they're invertebrates. They have what we call an exoskeleton, which is a hardened, jointed shell to which all the muscles are attached. And they don't grow in the same way as mammals, birds, fish, etc. do. They don't have babies that simply grow bigger as they get older. They change their entire exoskeleton when they molt, and they molt several times, the new one being bigger with more room to go into. Some insects' young look like small versions of the adults, like grasshoppers, for instance. Butterflies and moths' young look nothing like the adults. They're caterpillars, and they change shape as they grow, often looking completely different when they're fully grown to when they're first hatched from the egg. So a butterfly life history starts with a mated or fertile female laying an egg. And the egg hatches, or we use the word ecloses, and a tiny larva or caterpillar, we use those terms interchangeably, crawls out and it usually eats the eggshell as its first meal. Doesn't always happen, but most of them do. It then eats mostly leaves as fast as it can, growing until there's too much caterpillar to fit in its skin. The skin gets too tight, a new skin grows under the old one, and the larva sheds that, and it usually eats it as well. The stage between the egg and the first molt is the first instar. That's a word we use for the stage between two molts usually. After the first molt, the second instar appears. There are usually 4 to 5 instars, sometimes 6 or more in species that live in difficult places like cold conditions and so on that can grow very slowly. The last molt reveals a pupa or chrysalis. Again, we use those terms interchangeably. And the adult butterfly develops inside the pupa, and then it hatches or it closes, and it goes on to fly away. So let's look at an example. Again, I've picked one which I think a lot of people will be familiar with, the forest crane, Euxanthe wakefieldi. Beautiful butterfly. The egg is about 1.3 millimeters diameter. And the first instar caterpillar, when it hatches, is about 4.5 millimeters. It's very tightly packed into its shell. And the egg takes about a week to hatch. It's packed very tight inside the egg, and it grows to about 9 millimeters in a week, at which point it has to molt or burst. So you can see the new head. On this one, it's the first instar molting. It's grown to twice its size. And you can see just behind the head, there's a new head appearing in the skin. And then it carries on from there. The second instar starts off at 9 millimeters long and then grows to 12 millimeters, but it's fully grown as a second instar. You see it's changing color. It's turning green because it gets color from the chlorophyll in the leaves it eats. Then there's a young third instar, and you can see it's starting to get some dorsal markings, some markings on the back, which is typical of its subfamily Charaxinae. The fourth instar grows some 19 millimeters to 30 millimeters, also in about 8 days. You can see it's really starting to look different now. It's quite an amazing looking beast, isn't it? And there's a fully grown fifth instar caterpillar, which normally grows to about 52 millimeters long, about 2 inches, and very fat, very well camouflaged. And like a lot of the Charaxinae, it's got this strange head shield that looks like a pair of cow's horns on this species. Then, when it's got to this stage, it spins a silken pad or a twig or a leaf, and it hangs upside down and curls up, goes into what we call prepupal stage, and then finally forms a pupa, which is about 30 millimeters long. You can see very well camouflaged, green, with markings that make it look like a bit like a dried up leaf. So the next thing that happens is a butterfly hatches out. This is a female, got a wingspan of about 8 to 90 millimeters, and there's the empty pupal shell that she just hatched out on. It's actually the same pupa you saw earlier on. And then there's the male, beautiful black and blue butterfly with a yellow abdomen. And the reason why they're called Euxanthe is from the Greek word for yellow, which is xanthos. You see, the male and female have both got this yellow abdomen. So let's now have a look at some actual action. So we've got a painted lady laying an egg. It's an example of the family named Nymphalidae. Belisacardui is its scientific name. Here she goes. She's on a host plant, which is a thistle. She's laying it on a plant called Berkea bipinnatifida, which is common all the way through eastern side of Africa, going as far north as Kenya and westward to Zambia. And the eggs are all over that leaf, as you can see. She's been plastering the eggs all over the leaves. And painted ladies use many of the thistle species, Asteraceae, but they also use mallows and several other plant families. They're the most widespread butterfly in the world. The adults migrate all over Africa and into Europe and Asia, and also North America. And they've even got as far as Iceland, inside the Arctic Circle. They're actually more prolific migrants than the American monarch, but that's a story for another day. Here we go. Next slide. So clockwise on the bottom right, you can see an egg vastly enlarged using a super macro lens. And the first instars create these little silken webs, like little hammocks underneath the leaf. And you can see that like black pepper is actually its dung, its frass. And as they grow, they extend to the left. You can see the caterpillar's extended the size of its web. and it hides in there until it gets really big, and then it crawls out and starts eating the whole leaves. And as you can see, the final instar caterpillar at the top left, it's quite a handsome beast, so there's blackish color with those lovely orangey yellow and pink markings, but they're very variable. They vary from whitish gray all the way through to black, and the yellow can be just pale cream or quite dark yellow. The chrysalis is a beautiful golden bauble. It looks a bit like a Christmas tree decoration. And the actual name chrysalis comes from the Greek word for gold, which is chrysos. This fresh female, the top right, emerged in the evening from that pupa, and here she is sunning herself before she sets out on her journey. And in southern Africa, we don't really know where they go to. How do they get across the tropics? That's a question we still have to answer. So let's look at some of the tools of the trade. How do you go about breeding butterflies and moths or rearing them? Well, you don't need expensive lab tools to rear butterflies and moths. The average kitchen will have most of what you need in its drawers and cupboards, or you can use repurposed packaging. It's a great way to recycle old boxes and buckets and things. And the local plastic shop can usually fill in any gaps, and some things are available to buy online. So let's start. So some essential tools are specimen jars. There we go. A field guide. See the moth book there. A water spray bottle, because these things need moisture and you mustn't let them dry out too much. And very important, a notebook to write it all down. And also, for moving small larvae around, obviously you can't pick them up with your fingers, you'll hurt them. So use brushes for that. Even large caterpillars prefer to use brushes rather than your fingers. And of course, if you smoke, if you've got nicotine on your fingers, you'll actually kill them. And we use tweezers for handling leaves and twigs and so on. Sunkana Bradley, and I don't know if she's into it, I think she wasn't able to attend, but she's one of our top caterpillar rearers in South Africa, and she's got a menagerie in her study. All those bars, all those jars you can see there contain a caterpillar of something or other. Pill bottles, like the one you can see at the bottom left, they're the ones you get when you get pills from the pharmacist. They're very good for keeping caterpillars in. Or you can get these little vials from your plastic shop. We use those a lot. Glass is something we use. In fact, it's a good idea for some caterpillars, like the Playboy butterflies. They can eat through plastic, so it's a good idea to use glass rather than plastic. And we use gauze a lot because you don't want to have a totally sealed container. If you do that, then the moisture builds up inside, and you can get mold forming, and that can hurt the caterpillar or even kill it. So it's a good idea to keep it ventilated. And if you've got a sealed lid, drill some holes in it. Here we have some examples of how to handle houseplant. We've got a 3 litre plastic sweetie jar. I got that from the plastic shop. And we use that as a hatching cage for small subjects. You can see there's a chrysalis hanging from a twig in there. And this painted lady emerged in that sweetie jar, and she was fine. We released her the next morning. You saw her in the previous slide. Kitchen towel and dead leaves for the adult to cling onto are very important. They can't easily hang on to plastic. They're liable to fall down and hurt themselves. And of course, when they're freshly emerged, the wings are soft and they break very easily. Press stick is, I think everybody knows what that is. You can buy it from any stationery store. It looks like chewing gum, but don't try chewing it. And you just soften it up, and you can mold it, you can stick it. It's good for holding sticks onto the sides of jars and all sorts of things. I keep houseplant in a plastic bottle filled with water, and then you just wrap it in plastic film. Then you can put the whole thing into a small fridge or the door of a big one, and it can keep fresh for, in fact, I've had houseplant stay fresh for several weeks when I've found caterpillars somewhere thousands of kilometers away and I've taken them home to rear. And you sort of like, every time you open the fridge door, you think, please don't start rotting on me, but it stays fresh. Here's some examples of the tools of the trade. There's press stick. Power tack is the one you get down here in South Africa, but there's lots of other ones. And then you see to the right of that is a little plastic goodie. And then the next thing is Pasteur pipettes, which can be bought online from a lab supplier. They're very cheap. You're normally going to buy them in bulk, cost about $10 for a box of 500 or so. And then what you do is just snip off the end, and then you use press stick. You wrap it around a sprig of host plant. You put some water into the plaster pipette, and then just simply seal it with press stick. And then, of course, kitchen towels are very useful for cleaning up and collecting the frass in containers, because the frass is insect dung and caterpillars produce a lot of it. There's an example of an ice cream tub. They're very useful things. Add the host plant. Happy caterpillars. You see they produce some poo there, and you just remove the caterpillars and the leaves. You throw out the dirty towel and the frass, replace it, put the leaves and the caterpillar back. It's easy. So, what do you do if you've got, a lot of caterpillars, or you've got fresh host plants available in your garden or nearby in a nature reserve? Because the best thing to do is to actually ensure your caterpillars get fresh host plants, is to allow them to eat what's on the tree. But if you just put them on the tree, of course, they'll escape or they'll get eaten by birds or wasps. So you prevent escapes by making a sleeve. And that a fine veil fabric like organza is a very good one. Just make a sleeve, stitch it down the side, and make a hem at either end. Put some string through the hem, and they become drawstrings. Just pop the caterpillars inside, close both ends. Don't overcrowd. In fact, I found with some of the caraxes, you don't want to put more than two or three in one sleeve. They don't like being overcrowded. Don't use gauze. The big openings in gauze allow wasps and flies access to your healthy livestock. And wasps and flies are actually the biggest predators of butterflies and moths. Not birds, not spiders. It's the parasitoids that lay their eggs on your caterpillars, which burrow inside. Some calls it being body snatched. And what you'll find, instead of a beautiful butterfly or moth, you get a fly or a wasp. That is just as important scientifically. We don't know much about these parasitoids, and it's important that we know more about. For larger species, you'll need a more spacious emerging cage than a bottle. It helps to be able to see inside. Son's got this nice little glass-lined container here that she uses, and I use these clear plastic ammunition boxes from the plastic shop. And I put the bucket in there, contains earth with buried pupae, or you can just hang butterfly pupae up in there. Have some twigs. Have some twigs for the adults to climb up and hang to expand their wings. And also, it helps to have kitchen towel, again using press stick, to give them something to crawl up. Because if they do fall down, at least they can then crawl up and hold. They need to be dangling down with their wings hanging free. If it catches on something, you'll end up with a cripple that can't fly, unfortunately. So let's have a look at some actual examples of life histories. You can see it's actually not that difficult to rear them. Citrus swallowtail, Papilionidae, Papilio demodocus demodocus. We start off with an egg. There's one there laid on a lemon tree. Lemon is a great houseplant for swallowtails. When it's vastly enlarged, you can see it's actually stuck there with glue. There's a little circle of glue underneath it. And when the baby caterpillar hatches out, it looks like a bird dropping. And that's not an accident, because birds often don't eat their own droppings. So it puts them off eating them. Older caterpillars look like curled leaves with grey withered patches on them. And if you tickle one of them, it'll rear up, thrash around, and push out an orange V-shaped organ that smells of plant oils and looks like a snake's tongue. That's called osmeterium. The eye spots on the caterpillar's thorax reinforce the illusion, and that's designed to startle and scare away small predators. It's all about not getting eaten. The chrysalis or pupa looks like a little broken twig. This one's been formed on a leaf, but often they form them on tree bark. It's very difficult to spot them, and they're very extremely variable in color. Sometimes they're green, sometimes they're brown, and they're well camouflaged. And of course, the adult is one of our most familiar butterflies. It's something that we see all over subtropical Africa, even as far south as Cape Town. Anywhere man has planted citrus trees in Africa, it turns up. It's got a close relative in India called Demolaeus, the lime swallowtail, which has got more yellow on it. Let's have a look at one of the Lycinidae now. The fig tree blend, another widespread species, Myrina salus picadula. This one is found where any of members of the fig family grow, even in the desert. They'll also use the fig family Moraceae, so they'll use mulberry as well. Mulberry is a member of the fig family. So clockwise on the bottom right, there's a female laying an egg on my tiki creeper at home. And then you can see the egg, that's on a mulberry bud. Tiny, tiny little golf ball, only about half a millimeter across. And then the bottom left, you can see it's a half-grown caterpillar. And what are those ants doing? Well, a lot of butterflies of the Mycinidae actually are attractive to ants as caterpillars, and it varies from this one, which just likes to have the ants around, and we think the ants work by scaring away predators like predatory flies and so on. But some butterflies actually need to live inside the ant's nest to survive. Some caterpillars, I'm not going to go deeply into that here because it's a huge subject, actually live inside the ant's nest and eat the ant's young. Above that was a fully grown caterpillar, very well camouflaged in the fig leaves. The chrysalis or pupa looks like a little tiny fig. And of course, the adult is one of the most beautiful butterflies. It's only about 35, 40 meters across, and it's one of our most beautiful Lycinidae. Talking about ant association, I've got a couple of examples for you here. Many of the Lycinidae, if not most, are reliant on ants in some way to survive and avoid predators. The common fig-tree blue is just one, and I've got some more examples here, the spotted hairtail and the natal burnished opal. So at the bottom, we've got Anthony larides, the spotted ciliate blue. You can see at the bottom left, there's a caterpillar there, and there's an ant on top of it. And if you look carefully, you can see there's a little bead of liquid being extruded from a gland on the caterpillar's back. And it's found, this is a widespread butterfly in Africa. They feed on Beckelia or thorn tree species. And that's the droplet of honeydew, where it's got a special nectary gland for this purpose. And that liquid sugary, we think it also contains chemicals that influence the ant's behavior. The presence of the ants is thought to deter small parasitoids. And the pupae are formed out among the leaves where they rely on camouflage protection. Like most lycinids, the adults are small with a brightly colored upper side. And again, it's a widespread butterfly. Here we have a top. We have one that's not quite so widespread around Africa. We only get chrysoritis in South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Namibia. And you can see the caterpillar there. It's got an ant sitting on top of it. That caterpillar, its body is completely covered with glands that emit chemicals that influence the ant's behavior. The ants will stay with it, and the caterpillar comes out at night to eat the leaves of the plant, and then it spends the day living inside the ant's bivouac, which is made from chewed up bark called carton. And you can see there the chrysalis looks like a little moth chrysalis. It's not brightly colored or camouflaged or anything. It doesn't need to be. It's hidden. And the male you can see there, beautiful orange butterfly, golden orange iridescent color, is nectaring on the host plant tickberry, Osteospermum moniliferum. And these butterflies are found almost entirely in South Africa, but they've got relatives all over the continent. You mustn't try keeping more than one of those caterpillars in a container because most of them are cannibals. They'll eat one another. Now let's have a look at one of the Peridae. These are the white butterflies. This is Belanois thysa, the false-dotted border. We've got plenty of white butterflies in Africa, family Peridae. This is Belanois thysa. It's called the false-dotted border because it looks like another butterfly that we call a dotted border. More about that in another talk, I hope. Then clockwise from the bottom right. Clockwise from the bottom right, there's a female laying an egg on a host plant, bush cherry, which is one of the Meiruas. The egg, greatly magnified, which the eggs often look like little bottles. And then a fully grown caterpillar, very well camouflaged with those lines that break up its outline. The chrysalis, like a swallowtail chrysalis, is attached to a leaf by a silken girdle. The male is white, and the female, this is a cream example, and they vary in color from white through cream and yellow to buff or even gray. They're very variable butterflies. We have another look at one of the Nymphalidae. This is subfamily Limnidini, Necticiclava marpessa, again a widespread butterfly in Africa. The African spotted sailor. And then looking from the bottom right, you can see an amazing pair of adults there. I think the male's busy feeding on nectar while the female's just hanging around. And then the egg is a spiny spear covered in a pattern of hexagonal hollows, which is typical of this subfamily. The eggs look similar, and this is a huge subfamily. The butterflies are extremely variable, going from things like the gold-banded forester, the sailors, and everything and the gliders, false acreas. The butterflies can look very different, but the eggs are all very similar. The bottom left, you can see a leaf that's been eaten at the tip. And if you look very carefully, right at the very tip of the vein, you'll see a little caterpillar. And that's what it does. It eats the tip, and then it hides underneath the leaf and covers itself in its own poop. It looks like a piece of lichen that's fallen down. And just above that, there is a fully grown caterpillar. Looks just like a curled up piece of dead leaf. It's even got a bit of green marking on its tail end just to reinforce the illusion. The chrysalis also looks like a bit of dead leaf. And then on the right, there's a freshly emerged adult. It's really the only time it's easy to see the underside of these butterflies because they normally like to sit with their wings open. Another one of the Nymphalidae. The Nymphalidae is a big family of butterflies. The painted lady is an nymphalid, the caraxes is an nymphalid, your spotted sailor is an nymphalid, and so is a dark wanderer. This time a subfamily Heliconini, or long wings. Scientific name is Bimetistes agonisi. And here's an example. Bottom right, again clockwise, there's a female laying eggs. You see those yellow spots on the leaves, and she's laying eggs, a batch of eggs on the host plant. The mamba greenstem, Adenia gymifera, which is a common plant all the way along the east coast of Africa. There's a close-up of the eggs. There's a batch of about 50 eggs on a leaf, and then the bottom left, you can see very close up, taken with the super macro lens. You can see if you look very carefully, you can actually see the embryo inside the egg because the shell is clear. When the caterpillars are fully grown, they're the most incredibly weird-looking creatures. There's massive yellow branched spines. They look like they sting, but they actually don't. The plant they're feeding on is full of toxins, and most of the toxins are in the skin of the stems, and that's what they eat. They don't eat the stems or leaves. They eat the skin of the stems. The pupa has got to be one of the weirdest pupae of all butterflies. It's got those strange tentacles ranged along its back. In fact, the whole genus has got strange-looking pupae, not just this one. This is just an example we get here in South Africa. And in the top right, there's a male adult, and he's showing his usual behavior of perching high up on a tree, watching for a female to fly past. And when he sees one, he'll fly up, dive down, drop on her, and mate her, and the whole thing starts again. Then we'll have a look at one of the family Hesperiidae. This is subfamily Perginae, Tagiades fleeces. The Hesperiidae are what we call the skippers. And they're different to other butterflies. The clouded flat, bottom right, is a female sitting with her wings held flat, which is why they're called flats. That's how they get their name. The egg, these butterflies have got a great way of hiding their eggs. The female covers them with scales. Those actually look like hairs, but they're actually just similar to wing scales. When she lays the egg, it's sticky, and some of the hairs from her rear stick to the egg and hide it. It's a great way of hiding them from parasitoids and predators. The young caterpillar who hatches out, you see bottom left, is actually cut a slot in the leaf, and I opened up its little shelter there. You can see just above it, that's what the shelter looks like. And when you're looking for caterpillars, looking for feeding damage is an important thing to do. When you're looking for skippers, watch out for leaves that have been stitched together. Just to the right of that, there's a fully grown caterpillar, which is extremely conspicuous when it's out of its curled up leaf. And it shows a typical shape of a skipper caterpillar or larva. The head has got a definite neck behind it. And then the pupa at the top, excuse me, quick drink. The pupa is formed in a little cocoon inside the shelter. And if you take it out like that, when you can see it's got these strange grey markings on it. And we often find with skipper butterflies, the larvae spin cocoons. Let's have a look at a couple of moths. We could spend all day going through all the different butterfly families, and for moths to be here for a month, and so many of them. Some of the better known ones. You've got the Saturniidae or emperor moths, Argemia mimosae, and I think a lot of you will have seen this particular species. It's again found in the savanna and woodland areas, all the way from South Africa right up into Central Africa and beyond. Now, the moths are important to the caterpillar era because 90% of the caterpillars you find are going to turn out to be moths. Here's not the place for a debate on the difference between butterflies and moths, but emperor moths are among the most spectacular, conspicuous caterpillars. And you can see here when the baby caterpillars, well, first of all, that female is in a cardboard box. She came to light. Oops. She came to light at work one day, and I captured her and put her in a cardboard box. Left her overnight, and then she laid some eggs. And you never know with females. Yeah, you didn't see them mating. These ones will lay eggs even if they weren't fertile. But luckily they were fertile. The first instar caterpillars, in the middle there, are often black or brown, and the second instars develop some green colouring as they get older. And then the final instar at the top left is well camouflaged amongst the leaves of its host plant, which is Meirua down here, but it feeds on many members of that family of plants. Sclerocarya biria is one of the main host plants down here, but they feed on tambuti and many other plants in the I think it's Euphorbiaceae. This species is one of those who spin a strong cocoon. You can see the top center there in which to pupate. And if you look on the trees in winter when they've lost their leaves, you actually can often see the cocoons. And you can actually go up there and with pair secateurs and cut them down if you're allowed to, and take them home to hatch out the moth. And at the top right, the adult male is one of the most beautiful moths. Looking at another moth, a smaller one, the African hummingbird hawk moth. This is an example of the moth family Sphingidae. Sphingidae are hawk moths, and this particular one is called Macroglossum trochilus. Macroglossum means big tongue in Latin. You can see why when you look here. Because first of all, the bottom right is a mating pair of the moths. When they're sitting, they're little triangular jet fighters, and like most moths and butterflies, they mate tail to tail. So you see the little brown diamond sitting on the bushes. You know you've found some moths doing what comes naturally. The eggs in the middle there look very like swallowtail eggs. They're just like little green pearls, and they're usually laid in ones and twos on a leaf surface. And all sphingid caterpillars have got a tail horn that can be very conspicuous on a first instar like this one, which is about to molt. You can see its new head developing behind the old one. The second instar has developed some green colouring. The final instar you can see there is on its Indian madder host plant, Rubia cordifolia. It's one of those species, like a lot of hawk moths, it's got more than one colour morph. So if you have a look here, you can see that's actually a brown morph. There are two different forms of the larva. More of a pinky brown colour. The pupae are formed in leaf litter and loose soil, which is why it's important. We always say to people, don't sweep the leaves away in your garden. Let them accumulate, let them form humus, because a lot of moths and some butterflies form their pupae either underground or in the loose leaf litter. And you can see that the moth's tongue or proboscis is so long that it needs its own compartment in the pupa. And then you can see at the top right, there's an adult nectaring on a Sorolea flower showing its proboscis in action. And a lot of people mistake these for, I get people putting them on iNat saying it's a hummingbird. Well, it's a hummingbird hawk moth. Right, so let's go through some examples of life histories. We've just produced in South Africa But this book can be used all over Africa. It says my first book of South African caterpillars, but a lot of these, like painted ladies and Mapani worms, they are found virtually all over Africa, at least in the savanna areas at any rate. And we cover like 56 species in the book, and most of them are Pan-African in distribution, so anybody could use this. And it's a kid's book, and it's actually produced in four of the local languages. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed yourselves. Do you have any questions? Let's stop sharing the screen now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Steve, for that very insightful presentation. That's really very, very exceptional. So I will open the floor to our audience. If anyone has a question, I see there's no question so far that's coming through the chat box. So maybe if anyone has a question, a comment or the same, feel free. Maybe you can raise your hand. We'll give you an opportunity to interact one-on-one with our speaker, or better still, you can still raise them through the chat box. Thank you. So the floor is open to and actually here.
I can hear a lot of
Sorry
people
for
talking.
that.
Yeah.
Yes, someone is okay. There are some comments that are coming through the chat box, and we have Barnabas Ani, amazing presentation, Steve. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you very much. And Belinda Walker is asking, thank you for the fascinating talk. Where can one buy the children's book in Kenya?
That's a good point, actually. I would imagine it's available in quite a few bookshops, but I'll ask my publisher and I'll let you know. Because I know people can buy my field guide all over Africa. I know it turns up in the weirdest places. I've even seen it in the airports in London. So yeah, it should be available in the bigger bookshops.
Okay, thank you for that. I see a lot of questions are really coming in through the chat box. Kasia, thanks for a really interesting talk, and Johan Haynes, thanks, Steve. Yeah, Clay, thank you for your beautiful and interesting presentation. And there's a question from Dave Hilliard. How are butterflies faring in Kenya, and what can be done to help with their conservation? Are you able to respond to anything that,
Yeah, well,
Steve?
I've got a few friends in Kenya, like Steve Collins in Nairobi.
Yeah.
Don't know if he's here. I know he does a heck of a lot for conservation. And yeah, look, insects have got problems all over the world. It's not just in Africa where their numbers are falling. We must have all heard of the insect apocalypse with the number of insects just falling like a stone, and the use of pesticides and habitat destruction, and it's all over. But there's a lot of work going on. This particular talk, just creating awareness of butterflies and moths is important. And the biggest thing is to encourage people not to use pesticides in their gardens. I know it's difficult to tell a farmer not to do that, but certainly in a garden, provided it's not obviously a food garden, and it's not a good idea to use pesticides, because we always say to people, if nothing's eating your plants, your garden's not healthy. Plants are meant to be eaten by insects, they're herbivores. But as regards conservation, there's a lot going on at the moment. We've started a butterfly counting initiative. It started out in England back in the 1970s, spread all over Europe, and it's just started up in Africa now. It's called the European Butterfly Monitoring Scheme, but in actual fact, it's global, and a lot of it's to do with educating people and not using pesticides and trying to stop people from developing, cutting down forests, strip mining countryside. All those things are bad for biodiversity as a whole. And of course, being insects, they're the first rung on the food chain after plants. So everything relies on insects for food. Birds and small mammals, everything tends to feed on insects. So it's natural for them to be eaten. So if you pull away the insect layer from the ecosystem, then the whole ecology falls down.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for the response. There is also another question from Patrick Lumumba, and he's asking, can butterflies be reared throughout the year, or there are particular seasons?
Yeah, we got some extremely rare butterflies in Africa, and I know there must be several which we only know of from one specimen in a collection made 50 years ago, and it'll be in Steve's Abry collection in Cairn, and we often find that that butterfly was only found around one tree in a forest somewhere that was cut down years ago. So the butterfly is extinct. We've got many butterflies that have gone extinct. A lot of them are, particularly the ones that like ants, tend to be very choosy about where they are. So we do get extremely rare butterflies, and certainly in South Africa we've been doing a lot. We've got a couple of special nature reserves for specifically for rare butterflies. But even we lost one down here due to a fire. The fire was so bad it wrecked everything, and it was down. The butterfly was down to one habitat or one location, and unfortunately, the fire seems to have wiped it out. So you do get rarities, but we get a lot of widespread ones, like the painted lady, which goes just about everywhere. So yeah, we get rare ones. They're a bit like birds. You get rare ones, and you get common ones as well.
Great. Thank you. Taruni Kamwaro saying, yeah, here noticed butterflies moving in northern Kenya. Thank you very much for the update, Saruni. And there's a question from Ivy Giru and Niru. She's asking, I'm curious to understand with climate change, habitat loss, and chemical pollution being a great driver of biodiversity loss, what do you think is the fate of these organisms in Africa? What would you suggest as being hot research topics in the light of the three main drivers across Africa?
Absolutely. There's a lot of research going on as to how butterflies got where they are and how they're responding to climate change. And climate change has been around. It's not. Everybody says climate change is new. It's not. It's been happening since the planet was formed 4.5 billion years ago. And even in the past, 3.5 million years in the Pleistocene, there's been enormous changes in Africa. And what happens is butterflies can fly. They can move around. And so the widespread ones like the painted lady, they just move to a new area which is more suitable for them. And even the rare ones, they can sometimes move to a new spot. They follow their host plants. Unfortunately, sometimes they do go extinct. But extinction is a natural process. If it wasn't for extinction, we still have dinosaurs everywhere. Um, so it is a natural thing, but what is really worrying is the whole biodiversity loss we're getting. A lot of that's got to do, as I said earlier, by modification of the habitat, removal of host plants, mining and so on, and which is hurting them, and it hurts everything, not just the butterflies. Everything suffers, and there's a lot of work going on to look at how we can get around that. We do know that they move. You're getting some, particularly in Europe, there are butterflies that only used to be found in France and places like that, which are now found in Scotland. And we know the same thing's happening in South Africa as well. Some of the rarer butterflies slowly are moving as it gets warmer. They're moving uphill into areas where it's cooler. Because over a few generations, remember these things can have many generations in a single year, so they actually can adapt.
Thank you for that. Charles Duarte, thank you for the insightful lecture. And Sotayo, amazing presentation. Really enjoyed it. Thanks, Steve. And there's a question from Barnabas Sani. Do butterflies or moths migrate across continents?
Yep, definitely. The painted lady down here. I saw there was another question that came in about the painted lady, and why don't we know what they do in South Africa? The only reason we don't know what they do in South Africa is we haven't been counting them yet. But certainly from the Sahel all the way up to Scandinavia, there's a huge amount of work being done. They've even tracked them using radar, flying over the Mediterranean Sea and the Sahara Desert and the Mediterranean in one leap, up to 6,000 meters high. And it's just incredible. There's a couple of researchers in Spain who are leading this, and I'm in contact with them, and they're in contact with people in Africa as well. And the next big research program is going to be to find out what the painted lady does south of the equator. Do they cross the equator, or don't they? If they don't cross the equator, are our painted ladies down here different to your ones up there? We don't know. We think they probably aren't different, but we got no evidence to say that they're the same species. Yeah.
That's really incredible. There's from Elaine Moore. Thanks for the presentation. Need to buy a field guide as I want to start a butterfly sanctuary in Elsame Conservancy, that's here in Kenya. I'm particularly curious about the emerald moths. Might you have any publication about them?
Emerald moths.
Yes.
Yeah, the moth books are scarce. And for years, we relied on one that had been out of print since 1972 with photographs of dead specimens that were really faded and you couldn't really tell much from it. But now we've got this beautiful new book. You can hold it up, people can see it, written by my friend Herman Staude, who is the top, probably one of the world's top authorities on exactly that kind of moth, what they call the Geometridae, the emeralds. And there's a whole load of photographs of emeralds, and there are thousands of species of these. And if you can see the pictures there, I'll try and hold it up. There's some examples. Now, these are all Southern African, but there's no reason why you shouldn't find them elsewhere in Africa. But I would get hold of a copy of this. There's also a site called Afro-Moths, which is run by a couple called William Girard de Prince in Belgium. It's just www.afromoths.net. And if you go onto that and you just type into the search line Geometridae, it works on scientific, not common names, unfortunately. And then you can spend a whole day scrolling through photographs, scratching your head because they've got so many pictures in that site. It's amazing. So it is a very good resource. If you use Herman's book, or Herman and his colleagues' book, to get to first base, so at least you can figure out what subfamily it is, or at least what family it is. You can often use Afromoths to get closer in. And then the other resource is iNaturalist, which is that's a global. It started out in America, in California, but it's gone all over the world. I think they're sitting on something like 4.5 billion records or something. It's a massive number. And now they've got identifiers all over the world. I'm one of them, and I know if Johan Haynes is still here, he does a lot of identifying, and you've got a resource there, so you can go into iNaturalist and just type on the top of the page Geometridae, and if you do it for Kenya or for wherever you are, it'll show you all the records for that family or that subfamily in your area. So you can scroll through them until you find the one you're looking at. I mean, if you took a photograph of any of these creatures, you can upload them to iNaturalist, and as long as you've got the geolocation tagged, it'll pick it up. And we've got a African Lepidoptera project in iNaturalist, so you can actually go in there and get in contact with all the local identifying people.
Mhm. Thank you very much for that. I think also maybe Steve, after the presentation, if you won't mind, you can maybe share your contact and your email address through the chat box, so that actually I'm sure there are really a lot of more follow-ups that our audience
Yeah,
would also like to know from you.
let me see if I can find that. Just closing down this presentation.
That's fine.
Because where's the chat box? Chat box. You see, there you go. Barnett is saying Herman was very helpful. How do I get into the chat?
Okay, maybe
There we go.
as you try to maneuver through that,
Got it.
you can actually be going through some more comments that have come in. And there is a comment from Peter Ngugi saying, "My name is Peter, a student from Wildlife Research and Training Institute that is here in Kenya. Thank you for the presentation. I want to start my journey of butterfly identification and would request for guidance, especially on the right source of information." So thank you, because you'll be sharing the contact. Also, Peter will be able to follow up on that. And also, I will welcome Peter as a member of Nature Kenya to join our insect committee, so that he can actually also interact with the team
Absolutely.
there. Yeah, at the end of this session, we'll actually have a representative from the insect committee who will take us through how you can join and be part of them. Yeah, from Simon, thanks
I'm just
for.
picking up a link. Here we go. This is the
Okay.
very important one. It's iNaturalist.
Yeah, I see you've
There we
already shared
go.
the.
Okay, and then let's just find the. At the moment, we've got counting systems set up in South Africa. And I think Kenya and Botswana have got official lists now, but the rest of the countries we still need to get. All the species are in the EBMS website, so you can do counting anywhere. There you go. So that's how you can go in there. I think if
Thank
you
you.
have those ones, that'll show you a lot. I see there's a question come up there now about so it sounds like somebody from England. Orange tip butterflies.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing those links. Very, very useful indeed. Uh, is there a season for specific butterflies? As from Michael Kiboy.
Yeah, funnily enough, there is down here in where I live in near Durban, late summer from the end of January through to probably around about now. The peak is in April. And I've been counting butterflies in my local nature reserve now for nearly 2 years. And you can see there's a clear peak. And that's when obviously, all the host plants are growing well, the nectar plants are full of flowers, and the numbers build up. And then obviously when it starts to get cold, they slowly get eaten. And then when it starts to warm up again and the rains start, they try to get started, but the predators just start eating them, and it takes a while for the numbers to build up. But down in the mountainous areas, it's more like midsummer, December, January, and in a lot of the mountainous areas and well, I was thinking about certainly in the tropical areas like Kenya and West Africa, then it's the monsoon that determines it. So you generally have two peaks in a year. You have one peak in October, November, and another one in May, June. And that's when the butterflies are most numerous.
Mm. Thank you. Thank you for that. There's also a comment from Dave Hilliard. I think for me, I try to explain to people that it is a small thing that run the world. As you know, all life will suffer if we had no insects. I'm a member of Bug Life in the UK, and as you say, it saddens me very much when I see people using pesticides. Thankfully, I have persuaded my neighbor to garden without pesticides, and I've seen bees and butterflies increase. But what people don't realize, and like you have pointed out, the host plants are just as important as the food plants. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with
If
that.
something's not eating your plants, you're doing something wrong.
True. So Brian is asking, you mentioned that the painted lady, for example, in South Africa, you don't know where they migrate. How long do they live? I'm guessing 2 to 3 weeks. Therefore, the distance they can fly shouldn't be too far. Can you give us your opinion here?
Well, yeah, I mean, we know that at the moment there's a big hatch down in the Cape. My friend Callan has got them flying around his house in Cape Town. About 3, 4 weeks ago, there was a big spurt of painted ladies around here. Every time I went for a walk, and there's actually within the EBMS, there is a painted lady counting app, which I'm encouraging people to use, because that's the way we're going to find out more about them is to actually count them in the wild. And then Constantin Stefanescu in Barcelona is capturing all the data, and that's how they learned about the European and the American ones, is simply by counting their numbers. And I've seen them flying north in northern South Africa. If you go up to what we call Limpopo province up there on the Zimbabwean border. A few years ago, there were a lot of painted ladies around. The strange thing was there were a lot of beautiful fresh specimens, but there were also a lot of really tatty old-looking specimens. That's a question. Why were some of them looking so worn and some of them were looking so fresh? Were some of them busy flying back from somewhere? And Constanti said to me, Steve, you should have caught that butterfly and sent me the course because we could tell from its from its stable elements, isotopes in its body. We can tell where it came from. That's the sort of research they can do nowadays.
Thank you. Still from Dev Iliad, as a comment of awareness here. I've tried several times to persuade my local authority to leave the purchase of wildflowers, especially lady smoke, for the orange-tipped butterflies. When they mow the grass fudges. But sadly, they are not interested. They say it's too much effort to organize, which is incredible because I'm asking them not to mow and to do less than they do. Do you have any advice of how we can inspire people to take more note and appreciate insects or butterflies?
Mowing, the no-mow movement, as we call it, is growing worldwide now. I'm actually surprised that in England they're battling to get the local authorities to not mow, because I've seen lots of examples in the Guardian, for instance, of where they're not mowing the sidewalks and the road verges, and the number of butterflies explodes. So I would actually just get hold of your local council and put them onto Patrick Barwell in the Guardian and let him give them a rev, because nowadays no mow is very important. My garden's being rewilded. I mean, I do mow the lawn, but it's just the lawns are so small. If you're going to mow, it's important to know if a certain species, like the orange tip, for instance, it uses lady's smock. Don't mow it when the plant is in flower and the butterflies are flying, or for a few weeks afterwards, because you'll kill the caterpillars. Mow it in winter when the butterfly caterpillar will crawl away from the plant and usually pupate nearby. If you really do want to keep your lawn looking neat and tidy, it is difficult. Like in the wild, you have herbivores. We've got zebra in Africa. They come along and they eat the moribund grasses in the veldt, and along come the wildebeest and they crop the fresh growth that comes up afterwards, and that stops the grass from taking over. If you remove the herbivores, then eventually you end up with savanna or even a forest. So you do need to do some range management. If you've modified it by taking away carnivores and herbivores, you're going to have to do something. And it's a question. It's a big question that all the nature reserve managers around the world are busy with. And one of the easiest ways to do it is simply to move the apex predators back in. That's what the Americans are doing with cougars and bears and coyotes. Is you stop killing them, and all of a sudden everything becomes normal again.
Thank
Bit difficult
you.
to do that in bit difficult to do that in suburban England, though.
No. Okay, from Barnabas Sunny, Haman was quite instrumental in helping me identify moths during my MSc project. I would love to get the moth guide as I continue exploring moths here in Nigeria. Greetings
Yeah.
from Kenya, Sunny.
Well, you can get that book anywhere. In fact, it's available on all the online platforms like Amazon. I think the same thing goes for the children's book as well. You can get any of these books on Amazon easily. And I know in Nigeria, there's quite an active butterfly conservation, a branch of LEPSOC. Um, they are doing a lot of counting work. And Nigeria's got huge problems with habitat destruction and so on, with farming, with population increases and all that sort of thing. At least somebody is now trying to do something about it. I see Dave just said that his own local authority is backwards in coming forwards when it comes to conservation. Well, the what you can do is get involved with the council and nag them about conservation. I mean, here in Durban, we had got a biodiversity production department here. It was set up by a lady who works for the called Deborah, what was her surname? Deborah Roberts, who now works for the UN, for the sustainability part of the UN, and she started a thing called corridors and refugia, and every single suburb of Durban has got streams and lakes and parks, and they're all planted with indigenous plants, or they removed the exotic aliens, and they encourage gardeners not to use pesticides, to plant locally indigenous plants, and the result is that Durban has got very good biodiversity. So the same thing goes for the UK. In the UK, there's a place called KNEP, KNEPP, and that's a stately home, I think it is, somewhere in the south of England, where they decided to turn all the farmland into rangeland. There's still farm there, but we do it in wild country. And I saw what they call it, a post the other day on Facebook where, somebody was saying that they'd seen purple emperor butterflies there and that sort of thing, which I never saw before. If you allow nature to come back, then the butterflies will come with it. Yeah, Dave just said he knows NEP. Yeah.
Thank you for that. So Tayo, thank you everyone. Cheers. Thank you very much, Awil. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. Well appreciated. Peter Ngugi will be very excited to join the Nature Kenya Insect Club. Karibu sana. Barbara Onyango, such an informative talk. Thanks. iNaturalist has been a useful tool I've been using in identifying species for quite a while now. Ravi, thank you very much. Steve Woodhall and Nature Kenya for wonderful presentation. Thank you very much, Ravi. And there is a question from Murav. Out of curiosity, with seasonal polyphenism, between all those cues that determines the different seasonal moves, which one do you think is the most important or the number one cue between humidity, temperature, and food availability? Is playing around with just temperature for my postgraduate studies in South
University of Glasgow, but he's very active in Nigeria. And he was involved in all the research with Betis Sapitza, with the seasonal polyphenism, the cues vary depending on the butterfly. The browns, you tend to find that the ones in the wet season have got bigger eye spots. And I think what the theory they're testing there, and I don't think it's proven yet, is that when there's more vegetation around, the butterflies are less visible to their potential mates. So they have these big eye spots and they have very high UV reflectors, so that they can find one another easily. But in winter, of course, there's less vegetation around them, and camouflage becomes more important. So the eye spots become smaller. And the other thing about the white butterflies we find in the Pieridae, particularly in the savanna areas, the Calotis and Belanois and the various Pieridae, the wet season forms have got a lot of black on them. And the dry season forms are very pale without much black. We think that's got to do with thermoregulation, because in the wet season, there's less sunlight around and the butterflies need to warm up. So they need dark markings on their wings to allow them to absorb more heat, because they rely on heat to be able to move. They're what they call poikilothermic. They can only fly when their body is warm enough to allow them. So you generally find that it's when there's more cloud around, the butterflies are darker. That's another one of the cues. But there's many other ones. Camouflage is a very important one. You often find with the Pieridae that the underside of the dry season forms is more leaf-like, because again, there's less vegetation to hide behind. So what makes them, I don't know what, it must purely be evolution that drives the process for leaf resembling. But it's a very Melaneous leader is a good example. You find that the eye spots on the wet season form specimens are much bigger than the dry season form specimens as well.
Thank you for that. From Dave Elliott again, thank you, Steve. And that's good advice. But truthfully, my own local authority are backwards in coming forward when it comes to conservation. I've tried so hard to stop them from mowing the patches of lady smoke, but I really appreciate your kind words. And from our insect community, thank you for sharing the resources which are very useful for monitoring and conservation of butterflies. Perhaps you could also share other platforms you have found to be useful on social media so members can plug into the process.
Yeah, I tend to use Facebook mostly. and I use Instagram a little bit. I've got a lady who now handles social media for me. She tells me I'm a bit of a dinosaur. Um, but what I can do, there are several groups on Facebook. There's an African butterflies LEPSOC one. There's one in mainly in West Africa. There's the African Butterfly Database. I don't know how many you people here know Shafi Shamoksh. He's a Hungarian guy. Spent a lot of time in the jungle. And he has a very enviable life. He spends most of his time chasing butterflies. But he runs the African Butterfly Database. So I could search around now. It's probably best if I just sent those to Bernard. I'll just send a link.
Thank you for that. And one last from Dave Hilliard, actually talking of NEP. It's in West Pacific. I know
Yeah,
it very well.
that's yeah.
And thank you, Steve, for super talk and inspirational. Thank you very much, everyone. And thank you very much, Steve, for your responses. We've actually exhausted all the comments, all the questions that came in through the chat box. And before we bring the curtains down, maybe I'll just give this opportunity to only two more questions, not necessarily through the chat box. If anyone feel like he or she wants to ask a question directly to the our today's speaker, feel free, you can raise your hand and then we give you an opportunity to do that. The floor is open. Two more questions before we close the session. Yeah.
I think we went through quite a bit. Is Dino there?
We ask if Dino is around. Dr. Dino, are you with us here? I think he's not around.
If you're not around now. I mean, Kenya is a place when I was a boy living in the UK, I dreamt about going to Kenya. That's where I originally wanted to go to. South Africa was actually second choice. I'm very lucky. I have spent some time in Kenya with Steve and with Mike Pretty John and a few other people up there. So yeah, I've not been everywhere in Kenya, but I've been to some of the best butterfly spots. It's a beautiful place.
Welcome back. Welcome back. We would love to see you back Kenya once again.
Well, we've got these platforms that we can talk online, which is almost as good as being there. So it's fantastic.
Thank you very much. So to close for us the session, as I told you, this virtual talk for today has been organized
Hang on, wait
courtesy
a
of
minute.
our insect committee.
Dave Hillian says he can't raise his hand, but he's got a question.
Okay, now we'll just give him an opportunity. Dave, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yep,
we can hear you. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
good, great, that's great. Steve, where in the UK did you grow up? Where do you come from?
Originally from near Rochdale, a place called Haywood.
So I'm from Lancashire.
Whereabouts in
So
Lancashire are you from?
I'm on the edge of Blackburn, between Blackburn and Preston.
Oh, you're just on the edge of the Pennines like we were.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
right. Yeah, yeah,
I still
yeah,
remember the first painted lady I ever saw. I almost died. I almost died.
yeah. I sometimes get them in the back garden occasionally. Yeah, painted ladies.
Yeah.
But I used to get lots and lots of butterflies about 30 years ago. Several, a few buddleia bushes, and they used to be
Mhm.
teeming with several different species, from peacock butterflies, red admirals, tortoiseshells. But now I
Mm.
only get maybe two or three, if you're lucky.
Yeah, it's
It's
strange. I mean, you hear in the UK, particularly because I'm a member of Butterfly Conservation and I obviously follow what's going on. There's a lot of species in the UK are extending their range. I remember when I was a boy, I never ever ever saw a comet anywhere, apart
yeah,
from one time we went down to Swapshire specifically to see them. I think it was Fine Scales Wood we went to go and find them, and we dipped. And now, last time I was in the UK, which is in 2019, commas were common. It was
yeah.
amazing.
That's true. Yeah, I do see a few commas as well. I do. Yeah, probably more than painted ladies. Yeah, I do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but good to talk to you, Steve. Thank you very much.
Cheers, Dave. Give that local council a hard time.
They're hard work. I think
Yeah.
it's down to one particular guy who just can't be bothered changing. He can't be bothered, and it's just one person. I've had councillors involved. I've had local biodiversity involved. It's one man. It's one man who cannot be bothered changing his ways.
It's on the wrong side of history, isn't he?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, but all the best and thank you, Steve. Cheers.
Cheers, Dave. Nice chatting to you.
You too.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dave Hilliard. And always a great pleasure having you virtually in our talks. Thank you. Thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, as I told you before, that this talk has been organized courtesy of our insect committee, and we have a representative, Bernard Koros, who joined us from the insect committee, and I want to give him this opportunity to just welcome you and also tell you who the insect committee are, what they do, and how you can join. Welcome, Bernard.
First of all, thank you, Steve. It's an honor and I admire your work. And thank you for being willing to share the wonderful presentation and the life history and your work. And it really feeds onto our mission for connecting people with nature. So as the insect committee, my name is Bernard Koros. I work for the insect committee of Nature Kenya, and we aim to promote the understanding and conservation of insects and invertebrates. So in East Africa, but all across the world, if we could have that influence, it would actually help our cause. And I would like to apologize for Dr. Dino Martins. He wasn't able to be with us, but he has been a patron and chairman, and through his commitment to actually supporting this committee, we have been able to do so many activities, learned so much in the process, and had a lot of impact in our members. So the whole mission of Nature Kenya is to connect people to nature, and that's what we strive to do even at the insect committee. So I have seen people getting excited and learning so much through our activities, like the do work we do every month in different places. In fact, this month do work is this coming Saturday here at the museum, and I'm very excited about it. And people of all ages come and really enjoy and learn so much more, so much about insects and the interactions with the plants, with water, with all these things, and how important they are to our ecosystem. As Stevie mentioned at the beginning, that how important insects are actually. That if you take them out of the ecosystem, it will actually collapse. So if you would like to join the insect committee from wherever you are, I know we have speakers from all over Africa and globally. Just join. You can support. Be a member of Nature Kenya. We'll put the links on how to join or support Nature Kenya, and you would be in turn supporting conservation all across actually in the work that we do. So again, thank you for all those who participated, and we also have publications that we circulate through our website. It's called discoverpollinators.org, which I will also share the link to in the chat, and also our email for any. We also do free insect identifications. We get people who come across insects in their gardens, while traveling, in their yards, at their workplaces, and we give them free IDs and give them a little bit about these little critters. So again, Steve, thank you very much for your willingness to join and share your wonderful photos. I've seen your photos on Facebook on butterfly gear and also on a naturalist, and it's an amazing record. And my interest actually is in the early stages and the interactions with plants, like why do they prefer this and that, and how they impact the overall health of the ecosystem, which is a lot about what you do. So again, we're very grateful. And we'll organize more and more of these talks, depending on how best we can get the ordinary person to connect and appreciate insects and vertebrates more, so that it can impact the plans that we do. Like I think what Dave Hilliard has been complaining about the local council, if they just appreciated the butterfly a little bit more, they would be more inclined to change the policies on mowing. So that's our aim, actually. Yeah.
I was quite amazed actually to hear that he was having problems. You constantly read in the UK about how the local councils are actually trying to do what Durban's done, which is to actually make their city more wildlife friendly. And I always thought the UK was way ahead of us, but clearly they're not. But I'm really honoured to have been invited today. I think it's been fantastic, and what you guys are doing up there is brilliant.
Yeah.
The Lepidoptera Society itself, I know we've got a new chair, Lynn Solis. She's actually Herman Stowley's neighbour, and and she's trying her darndest to get international funding for conservation efforts for Lepidoptera. To try and find ways that we can get the same kind of funding that BirdLife does for birds, for instance. And BirdLife has got so much money they can afford to pay researchers in all the universities doing basic research on why birds numbers are falling and what can be done to prevent it. And we've got a few people doing work on butterflies, but nowhere near as many as the birders are. And the reason for that is funding, pure and simple. There just isn't enough of it.
Yeah, I agree, and I hope we'll get to hear more on another platform about the Lepidoptera Society of Africa and the work that you're doing. But with regard to this topic that we are covering today, I understand there's a Caterpillar rearing group. I know you haven't mentioned it, but maybe you can point people to that. Maybe it can help with for people who want to immediately after this talk, they would want to embark would run to the gardens and find caterpillars to raise.
It's already got members there's already members in Kenya. There's a young lady down in Mombasa doing caterpillar rearing. Yeah, but I'll send you all the links. I'll just email. It's Bernard, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we've been in touch by email. I'll just send you an email with all those links in it. You can send them around your members, and then people can use those because they're all African. They're not just South African. We're looking to get members all over the continent.
Thank you very much. And I think in one of the comments, someone mentioned about their intent to develop a butterfly sanctuary. And I hope we can have many more. You mentioned that there's a couple in South Africa. There's several in South Africa.
There's nature reserves, there's a couple of nature reserves, but there's only a couple of flight houses. I know Steve Collins had one going in Karen, which I don't think that actually went anywhere. But there's one on the coast called Kipepeo. There's quite a few people in Kenya doing butterfly, sanctuaries, actually, where you have wild butterflies flying around. So I must actually dig up. I'm pretty sure Dino knows them because they're active on Facebook and we hear from them regularly. And there's a lot of people I know on the coast, for instance, they're doing commercial butterfly breeding and sending livestock to the flight houses overseas and that sort of thing, which never took off here because our nature conservation department were too anti people selling livestock. They equated it to selling rhino horn, which is rather silly. An insect is not like a rhino. But yeah, it's a way. I mean, around the world, there's been a lot of commercial outfits, like particularly in Papua New Guinea, where the locals farm birdwing butterflies, and they make a living out of it, and they send their livestock around the world. So there's lots of ways. People will conserve what benefits them. That's the important thing. to try and find some way, and a sanctuary is one way with tourism, obviously. We've got most of the nature reserves in South Africa. The nature guides there know very little about butterflies and moths. In fact, what I'm doing now, spending a lot of time teaching them about it. Just like today, they don't even know what the caterpillars do. So it's just a case of training people. And what you're doing is fantastic. That is part of the recipe for success, I think. So well done.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you. I hope we can. It all goes towards improving butterfly conservation, being practical and training them and having areas where especially children can learn and can interact with butterflies and see the whole process. We have a small project here in Nairobi. It's a small, we want to do a pollinator garden. It's actually there. We were trying to develop it into a learning area where kids can come and see all the shrubs and plants that attract or rather are good for butterflies and moths and even the insects and like beetles and the lot, and also experience them, of course, in that area. So have flowering plants there, have host plants there, have netting there, so that they can actually have a full experience instead of just what they do in class or what you can learn about in metamorphosis. So,
do you know Steve Collins? Bernard, do you know Steve Collins?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Because I know he's been very active in that respect. I mean, he was telling us the other day that he'd actually run a butterfly well, he had a butterfly sanctuary going at Abbey at one point.
Yes.
Yeah. But he does a lot teaching people about exactly what you're saying there. So he's already active. I mean, you're very lucky to have that guy. He's basically the grand man of African butterflies. He's always been the sort of and he's not getting any younger either. This is the other thing. So it's important to let him get on with what he's doing and support him, which is great. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Maybe I'll just put it back to the host.
Wrong way. There we go.
Fine. Okay. Thank you very much, Bernard, for the insights. To the audience who are not Nature Kenya members already, I've shared the link in the chat box, the link to our membership page. Just a very simple and easy process of joining us. Thank you very much for your time. And maybe just Steve, a parting shot, 5 seconds to the audience before we close.
What, do you want me to say something?
Yes, a parting
Okay,
shot.
well, Richard, Bernal, thank you very much for organising this. It's been a real pleasure. I mean, I wasn't too sure exactly what I needed to do because I think originally you wanted to get Sun or one of the ladies to talk and I think they probably would have said something different to what I said because they're new, and what they're doing is fantastic. And what we're seeing is all these little sort of green shoots, if you like, of people working with butterflies and moths around the world, not just in Africa. And certainly, in South Africa, it's been active for how many years now? I mean, Lepsop started here in '83, and then I think in '94 it went all Africa, and certainly in the past 5 or 6 years, we've seen more and more people from all African countries getting involved and joining society and getting their research supported by their local institutions and doing what you're doing here, which is getting local people to buy in and start working. It's fantastic. So just keep up the good work. I'll send you all the links that I've got, and then we can actually, I think, we need to get more cooperation going between Lepsoc Africa and organizations like the Insect Committee of Nature Kenya. What other countries are doing something like this? It's good to have that network going, which is really encouraging. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve, and we look forward to hosting you also in one of our upcoming talks. So we'll always keep it touch. Thank you very much for your
Absolutely, be a
time.
pleasure.
Yeah,
Thank you,
thank you.
Richard. Okay.
Thank you. To all the audience, thank you. Thank you very much. And see you again next month for another episode of such insightful, educative, interactive virtual talks. Thank you very much and
Okay.
have a great evening ahead. Thank you. You can leave at our own pleasure.
Thanks, Richard. So you'll send me a link to the
Yes.
transcript. Not a transcript, the recording.